panel, Juan Williams, co-host of The Five and a Fox News political analyst, Molly Hemingway, senior editor at The Federalist, and Marc Thiessen, an AEI fellow who has written 2 State of the Union addresses as lead speechwriter for President George W. Bush, and both of them the latter are Fox News contributors, all of you. So good to see you all.
Good to be with you, Martha.
Marc, I should start with you because you have done this. You know what this process is like. We've started to see some of the excerpts that have come out. What's your prediction, and what can you tell us about how you think we got here?
So, I mean, I think the State of the Union is the most watched speech that an American president ever gives. So this is a huge opportunity for Donald Trump. Last speech that he gave, 47 million people tuned in. So this is a chance to address the American people in more than 240 characters through the fake news media filter and get directly through to him. So he's got an opportunity to change impressions about himself. The biggest problem Trump has had going into this night is that he's had a huge successful year. He got tax reform through. He's had regulatory reform. He got a good new justice on the Supreme Court, conservative judges, drove ISIS from its caliphate. We can go on and on about the different accomplishments, but his approval rating, according to Gallup, is at 36%. So somebody with his accomplishments should not have that kind of a low approval rating, and it's actually down 9 points. He was 45% on his inauguration. So the problem is that Donald Trump has not been, despite all of his accomplishments, expanding his base, bringing more people into the Trump train.
Because when you look at the Obama administration, it was exactly the opposite.
Yeah.
There was a lot of positive feeling about him as a person, and yet people were not always as happy with the policies or the economy under President Obama. Let's look at a quote from today, from this afternoon at the luncheon at the White House, when the president spoke to some of us about what he was going to be speaking about tonight. And he said this. He was talking about comparing, being a business guy with governing. He said, having a business background and a successful business background is great, but oftentimes you do things that you would never do in business because you have to also govern with heart, he said. That is something that I've learned, maybe more than anything else. You govern with all the instincts of a businessman, but you have to add much more heart and soul into your decisions. He went on to say, you impact so many people's lives, Juan. Your thoughts on that and on what we may hear on that front tonight.
Well, that's a very appealing comment coming from the president. I think if his speech tonight is of that kind of unifying theme, if it's about reaching out, if it's about acknowledging, listen, we have a politically polarized country. I acknowledge that, and I understand that basis. I think then he can come to some of the unity themes that I think the country's hungering for. That could help him a great deal. Now, the thing is, he has not been a unifying figure. He's been a polarizing figure over the course of the last year. So when people are listening tonight, and I think lots of people are going to tune in because they love Donald Trump on television and all that. It's almost like reality TV. But they're going to be wondering at the same time, is this really what Donald Trump is thinking? Is this really who he is? That's why you see, Martha, so many Democrats opting to boycott, to stay away. That's why you're going to have protests outside. This is a different kind of State of the Union. I don't think any of the State of the Unions Marc wrote were attended by people who were protesting.
Molly, what's important to you tonight as you watch?
Well, I wanted to pick up on what Juan was just saying. Last year, he gave an address to Congress in February that was very unifying. It was very well received. But then immediately the next day, the headlines were taken over by people who opposed the president. He's never really been given a chance to just exert his leadership without a strong resistance. And so to some extent, it doesn't matter what he says tonight if the resistance is not going to give him a chance to just be president. And this idea that if he, this quote that you just read reminds me a lot of that compassionate conservatism that we saw from George W. Bush. Well, if he gives a very traditional speech, like everybody else does, where you just do a laundry list of handouts to lure independent voters, it will be well received by official D.C. for a few hours until the next, thing breaks. But part of his appeal was really breaking out of those orthodoxies and not doing everything the traditional way. And it might not be in his best interest, even if it's well received in D.C., with what made him so appealing during this campaign and his first year.
I mean, he's kind of in a rock and a hard place on that, isn't he, though? Because as Marc points out, his approval numbers are low. So in order to fix that, he's got to reach out to some people who can't handle the tweets or can't handle some of the behavior that they've seen from him as much as they might like what's going on with the economy, Marc.
But what he's got to do is he's got to be smart tactically about this. So what he needs to do is reach out his hand in bipartisan cooperation and dare the Democrats to refuse it. And that's exactly what he's doing on immigration. So on immigration, if you think about what happened since the shutdown, instead of
rubbing it in their faces. What he did is he offered a path to citizenship for 1.8 million people. That is something that challenges. It wasn't just legalization; it's citizenship. That's amnesty. He announced he supports amnesty. He's going to talk about his. He's not going to use the word, but he's going to talk about his support for amnesty tonight. That's challenging your base. That's what real leaders do. Is Chuck Schumer going to take his hand and try and reach an agreement with him, or is he going to refuse it? Because right now he's saying no money for the wall. So if that's the position, Donald Trump's going to look, even if the Democrats refuse to cooperate with him, Donald Trump's going to look a lot better for having made that.
Exactly right. Marc has thrown out the large marker that President Trump has put down on this. He's saying, are you going to turn those people away, Democrats? You're going to let them not get their right to stay in this country, Democrats? And what are they going to say to that one?
I think they have said it already, Martha, which is no. I mean, what they see is that Donald Trump wants to cut legal immigration. He wants to do away with family reunification through the lottery system. Donald Trump is anti-immigration, and that's what you're picking up on, Mark. The question is how does his base react when he says, I am for, and I think that you've seen people already, I think Breitbart called him Amnesty Don and the like, and Heritage said this is a non-starter because they're not even interested in what the president's offering in terms of a pathway to citizenship for the so-called dreamers. Well, that's a problem.
Yeah, this is the big danger. I mean, we had this thing where Donald Trump was declared the victor in the spat with Chuck Schumer. But if at the end of the day you don't see substantial changes to our immigration policy, providing amnesty to people but not doing anything to change the sort of structural, fundamental problems that have caused people so much anger about our immigration policy, it'll be a win for Chuck Schumer. So
the other side of that is you've got a larger need for comprehensive immigration reform. It's not just about the dreamers, it's about 11 million.
That's exactly where we've been forever on this, where everybody backs into their own corner and then they say, oh, forget it.
I hope not. I hope not. I hope this is an occasion for healing. I mean, that's what State of the Union, and I think with this president, particularly given the polarization, he has a chance. There's a very obvious niche. Stephen Miller is not Marc Thiessen, let me just tell you. But Gary Cohn was pretty good. Gary Cohn helped him deliver a very positive, optimistic message at Davos.
If Democrats want to get comprehensive immigration reform, this may be their only chance. Because just like only Nixon could go to China, it may be that only Donald Trump is willing to do that.
Thank you very much. Great to see all of you tonight. So still to come tonight, one of the big issues, as you can tell from our conversation, is